Hey, I'm streaming, y'all. Okay, there's the live stream. Okay, we got 2 people watching already. We've upped the production value a little bit. Okay, and I'm going to give some people some time to get in, hop on. We started a little bit early, just in case. We had some technical difficulties. Okay. My daughter's here with 2 people watching already. Camera's right there, so.
It's delayed.
Got a new boom mic. Up the production value a little bit. Yes, that's nice. Okay, and I'm going to give some people some time to get in, hop on. We started a little bit early, just in case. We had some technical difficulties. Okay. My daughter's here with 2 people watching already. Camera's right there, so.
It's delayed.
We've got 2 people watching.
It's delayed.
Yeah, it will be delayed.
See, that one's not delayed.
Well, that's recording to the computer. This is recording to the cloud. Okay, we got 5 people watching. Oh, we got somebody joining in already. Alright, thank you, Diana. Welcome aboard.
I'm gonna go eat.
Alright, have fun, sweetie.
Wait, is that like the, is that like, I think I did one, I've done one of those before. Is that like,
It's a Nearpod.
does it have like 360 things on there?
It can. This one actually does.
Huh.
Doesn't always have to.
I've done one like that before.
Alright, go eat.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, welcome aboard, Ashley. Okay, let's see what else we got. We got... Oh, welcome aboard, Quinn. We'll give it a few more minutes. You can come say hi if you want.
He's lying to you.
I just want to work.
Alright, eat, sweetie.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. Well, I tell you, okay, so we got 10 people watching now. Let's give some people some time to log in. Okay, welcome Thomas. Welcome Ruben. Welcome Jaslyn. If anybody wants to put anything in the chat, any questions before we get going, you're welcome to. It doesn't have to be about JFK. It can be about school or anything like that. Let's see, who else added? Oh, welcome aboard, Seal. Oh, welcome aboard, Miss Ross. So the way that I understood it is, basically this is for enrichment, but what I worked out with Bradford is to be able to give y'all bonus. So I think all these are going to be just bonus points. That's what it's going to end up being. And assuming y'all have the LEAP test, obviously this information you're going to need to know for it. Anybody else have any questions before we get going? Oh, sweet. Yeah. Oh, welcome aboard, Miss Edwards. Somebody asked a question, when is the LEAP test? To be brutally honest, we have no idea. We're not even entirely sure. I know they're saying that we'll come back to school on April 13th. Who knows? You know, it's one of those, if you remember going back to class, I told y'all I thought we'd be shocked if we make it to spring break, and of course we did not. So I'm not entirely sure. I saw somebody ask me, oh, it's not letting you watch. Are you on my YouTube channel, Miss Fuse? You should. That's how you watch it, is on YouTube. And of course, you pull up Nearpod and follow along. Asil asked, they're saying that there's no school for the rest of the year. You know, I saw that. I saw where they had that meeting, and they had that announcement from the governor. The way I read that, to best of my ability, is if he's basically giving the state permission that if this lasts too long, to be able to cancel school for the end of the year. But as far as I'm aware, EBR has not called it yet. I know some states, some school systems have, but we have not. So, not yet anyway. But if something like that happens, I'll let you know. And of course, let's hypothetically say this is it, right? School's over for the end of the year. We're done, right? You're still going to need to know U.S. history. You're still going to need to know the stuff for the LEAP test. So, Splash TV says you need the LEAP Nearpod code. Okay, here, it's right up here. Let me put it back full screen. But yeah, so, you know, and I'll tell you, if you just want to know U.S. history, I might even be doing some of this during the summer, just to get you ready for any potential possible LEAP test or ACT test or anything like that. So, thank you, Ruben. I appreciate that. Yeah, it's BXAGT for anybody following along. Okay, looks like we can go ahead and get started here. So today what I'm talking about is the JFK and LBJ administrations. Now that stands for John F. Kennedy and Lyndon B. Johnson. And so this is basically the administrations that were transpiring during the period of time that I was talking about in my last lesson. Alright, so when we last left off, JFK is dealing with the middle of the Cold War, dealing with the Soviet Union. Of course, their leader is Khrushchev. And there's kind of like this cat and mouse tug and war back and forth game that they played. First, really coming to a head in Cuba, where it really came to kind of a boiling point. First with the Bay of Pigs, followed by the Cuban Missile Crisis. And so the whole world's kind of on edge. Everybody's worried about, you know, are we going to have nuclear war? Because it does seem like we keep rolling the dice, and eventually we're going to roll up snake eyes, and everything's over with. Now, meanwhile, back in Germany after World War II, East Germany had become under control of the Soviets, as I talked about. And they're starting to get really poor in the eastern portion, which they refer to as the Eastern Bloc, right? Getting really, really poor. People starving to death in the streets. Miss Wells hops in. Thank you, Miss Wells. Yes, this will be posted afterwards. The live stream will be, so that is correct. But anyway, so the Eastern Bloc is just really suffering. I think I was reading somewhere that the average person over there is living off 700 calories a day, which the average person eats 2,000, right? So, I mean, it's really getting bad. And this has become a huge embarrassment for the Soviets who are trying to promote communism, right? It's hard to sit there and tell everybody, look how great communism is, when people are starving to death under communism, right? So their solution to that is not to take care of the people in Eastern Germany, but it is to build a giant wall and prevent anybody from coming in or out or seeing what's going on. So people are still suffering. It's just they're hoping you can't see it. And so they build kind of their own version of the Great Wall of China. It's not obviously as big, but it's heavily guarded, right? And they call that the Berlin Wall. Okay, and this is one of those virtual tours. You can see today what it looks like. Of course, if you imagine, there would be guard towers all in this middle area, but this is one portion. Of course, this is today, so everybody's put graffiti and stuff all over it. But you can see how it still exists there today. And of course, you also have people coming up and taking little pieces of the Berlin Wall just to say they have a little piece of history. So why did they build the Berlin Wall? What was the reason they built the Berlin Wall? So we had some new people. Welcome aboard, Jesus. Welcome aboard, Raleigh. Miss Fraser, welcome aboard. Welcome aboard, Ashley. I see you. Why did they build that Berlin Wall? Exactly. Prevent people from leaving. Good point. Yeah, let's highlight that one right here. Yeah, to just prevent people from leaving. Yeah, to stop an exodus. Great word usage. Absolutely. Stop people coming in and out. Very good one. Yeah, to keep people from seeing how bad things were getting in East Berlin. That's right. Oh, welcome aboard, Mr. Favors. Yeah, good point, too. Yeah, they also want to make sure capitalism does not interfere or influence East Germany. That's absolutely right. Okay, I'm going to give you another minute to answer. Okay, let's move on. So in an effort to look tough, both sides began to really ramp up their military. Of course, it's going to be a tradition that we're going to continue from this point in history there on out. The U.S. would send troops all along the border of Germany. Of course, so does Russia. And this is going to become a de facto representation of the physical divide between capitalism and communism. Now, what does de facto mean, in case somebody is unaware of it? There's two things, two ways you can have a rule. You can have it be de jure or de facto. Now, de jure, for example, would be Jim Crow making segregation legal, right? That's de jure, okay? De facto is when you just choose to uphold a law. You're not forced to. So if you go to the lunch area and you see children self-segregating, you know, all the Hispanics sit at one table, all the Asians sit in another one, that's de facto, right? So there's no law that says this is the representation, but it becomes the de facto representation that if you're on the eastern side of this wall, you're in communist land. There on out, right? All the way to China, all the way to the ocean. If you're on the other side of it, you're in what is known as the free world, right? And you often hear us refer to ourselves as the leader of the free world. Now, both sides meet several times, but do not resolve to stop nuclear testing, right? So we're testing nukes, they're testing nukes. And a big part of testing nukes is to really show off what we're capable of and what they're capable of. During this time, both sides build up so much weapons that this is the part where both sides start developing enough nuclear weapons that we could just pretty much end life on this planet. I think I read somewhere that at one point in time we had enough 7 times over to sterilize the earth, right? Like, so even bacteria does not survive. Why we need that much nuclear armament, who knows? But we definitely continue to ramp up, and so do they, the nuclear armament. Just a quick little video. Don't worry, it's not as long as any of the ones yesterday. Oops. Here's some examples of testing. And these are just tests where they were testing nuclear proliferation. Okay, so realizing the destructive power of the two nations is getting out of hand, they begin to soften their positions on the nuclear test ban treaty. And they would both start to break down, have these communications with each other. JFK is really great at working a room, being personable. And he's going to speak at American universities, and he's going to try and soften the tone on anti-Soviet Union, right? And he's going to speak to them. He's going to talk to Khrushchev directly, and he's going to talk about, what it meant to be part of the alliance together, and how both sides fought really hard, lost a lot of people trying to take down Hitler, and try and build on that common shared experience to basically create a scenario where we don't see each other as the enemies anymore. Okay, so what forced cooler heads to prevail? See if anybody has a good answer. Oh, welcome aboard, Miss Jackson.
Toby.
Yeah, what forced them to calm down? What is it you think got both sides, the U.S. and the Soviet Union, to just calm down? Ruben makes a point that it was getting out of hand. Yeah, that's a good point. Oh, Miss Wells asked a question while you are typing this. Will they hold us back if school is over for the rest of the year? No, that will not happen.
Oh, Jesus, thank the Lord.
Yeah, that's not going to happen. Yeah, Miss I made the point of the atomic bombs. Two nations are getting out of hand, right? I mean, when you got the ability to end life on the planet, that's right. Too much chaos. Very good. What do you think, Elizabeth? Why do you think both sides back down? You listened.
I don't know. This kind of sounds nicer. Too much chaos. I have the power to end somebody's life. People go crazy.
Yeah.
Just because when you have the power to end somebody's life, people just start going crazy.
I might. Oscar asked a question. Oh, you have to work till 5. Yeah, I might be able to pull off doing a live stream at 5. I'll see. If I did, that would be about the time I would do it. Okay. Alright. Okay, so during this course of time, the civil rights movement is still ramping up, right? Remember that DBQ I gave you on A. Philip Randolph? A lot of people are getting really anxious. They're trying to seize on a lot of opportunities to try and fight for civil rights. And they're going to decide to have this march on Washington. Now, I want you to remember back to how it had almost happened the last time under FDR. And, of course, you know, they were marching for civil rights in the form of breaking down racial barriers in the military. And if you remember, I told you to save that thought, how because it had been successful and FDR had kind of backed down, it kind of encouraged them the next time to go, hey, wait a minute, it worked last time, let's try it this time. Okay? Now, FDR panicked, right? He kind of backed off and said, wait, I'll give you what you want to stop you from marching on Washington. But you got to understand, we're dealing with a different beast with JFK because he actually wants civil rights. Okay, this is something that was kind of his policy, part of his agenda was to promote civil rights. So he kind of does it a different way. Instead of saying, look, let me give in to the demands of the civil rights protesters. Instead, I'm going to try and fight for them, but I'm going to do it one step further. I'm going to open up the front gates, right? I'm going to open up, so to speak, open up the White House lawn. I'm going to encourage them to march, right? Give them their proverbial day in the sun, if you will. And he's going to be so involved in it, he's actually going to participate in it. So it's a very different approach. It's not a FDR, hey, what can I do to get them to stop this march? JFK has more of a, no, let them march. Let them march, let them have their moment, let them have their day to shine, so to speak. And of course, you know, how many people have not heard the famous I Have a Dream speech from JFK? This is going to be the speech where that happens, right? This march on Washington. And it's really going to be embraced by the JFK administration, which is why you'll see a lot of the African American community really begin to embrace JFK at this point.
I went there.
You did.
Good evening, my fellow citizens. This afternoon, following a series of threats and defiant statements, the presence of Alabama National Guardsmen was required on the University of Alabama to carry out the final and unequivocal order of the United States District Court of the Northern District of Alabama. That order called for the admission of 2 clearly qualified young Alabama residents who happened to have been born Negro.
Okay, and this is another major step too. Of course, you have Brown v. Board of Education, and they decide to make Central High School in Little Rock, Arkansas, the test case for desegregating schools, and it's mitigating results, and of course that expands out, and it finally comes to a head when it hits the University of Alabama, right? You know, Roll Tide, Crimson Tide, Alabama. And the governor of Alabama at the time is a guy named George Wallace, and he's actually going to stand out on the front steps of Alabama to try to block students, black students, from coming to the University of Alabama. And of course, this governor, this George Wallace, he ran on the campaign of segregation now, segregation forever. And it's kind of fascinating. We talk about statues being taken down, like Confederate people, stuff like that. It should be of note that if y'all were to hop in your car tomorrow and try to drive to Florida, right? You get on I-10, first I-12, and it turns into I-10, and you're heading to Florida. For you to do that, you're going to have to drive through Mobile. And when you do, to get underneath Mobile River, you're going to have to drive underneath the George Wallace Tunnel, which means day after day after day, thousands and thousands of black people drive underneath a tunnel named after a guy whose very campaign slogan was segregation now, segregation forever. So it kind of makes this like weird situation. And of course, they're constantly talking about renaming the tunnel. But of course, this obviously, him sending in the National Guard to physically remove the governor from the University of Alabama, that also endures him quite a bit to those that are fighting for civil rights and to the black community. Okay, so how was JFK's response to the March on Washington different than that of FDR's?
I know the answer to this one.
Go ahead. You go ahead and answer. How was it different?
Well, because JFK wanted them to do the march, and FDR was 100% against it. Like,
Well, I don't know that he was against it. He didn't want that negative publicity, right?
like,
Where JFK, he saw the opportunity to really create a moment.
like he was part of the march.
That's right.
And FDR didn't want the people to, like, he didn't want the negative publicity, and so
That's right.
he discouraged it.
That's right. Yeah, he welcomed the protesters. That's absolutely right. I'm not sure who Games 3D is, but welcome aboard. Oh, Seal left us. And Jamisha left us. That's right, Mr. Wooden, you are absolutely correct. He encouraged the march and wanted to be part of the march. That's right.
I'm smart.
You're very good, sweet. Okay, I'm going to give y'all about another minute.
Yeah, he wants civil rights.
Yeah, he wanted civil rights. Yeah, that's a good one, too. And by the way, if y'all have any questions, feel free to put them in the live stream. If I miss anything or you're not sure about anything. Okay. Well, sometimes Nearprod lags out, so they may have answered and it just hadn't accepted their answer yet. So, right. Alright, let's move on. Okay, after the March on Washington, a church is bombed in Birmingham. In fact, if we were in class, I would show you a really good book I have called Bombingham that really breaks down the events and stuff like that. But this event, bombed in Birmingham, resulted in the death of 6 little girls. In fact, if you ever watch the movie Selma, that little opening monologue, the little opening scene that they have, that is a scene where they try to kind of recreate this situation. But anyway, this event is a horror that shocks the country and the world. And this is going to be what gives JFK the openings, right? This is the, unfortunately, the sacrifice that happened that allowed for JFK to really start to kind of be able to look for a potential way to pass this Civil Rights Act and get some real equality, right? Okay, so you got JFK. He's participated in civil rights. He's got his opening. He's about to pass the Civil Rights March. What do y'all think happens to JFK? If somebody wants to get a little bonus, they can hop into chat and tell me. What is it you think's about to happen to JFK now that he's about to pass some civil rights? Wait. Let's see somebody. Somebody gets it. Well, give them a chance. See if they get it.
But I know the answer.
I know you know the answer.
I think I'm wrong, though. I might be wrong. I'm pretty sure I'm not sure.
Okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and spoil it. Okay, there we go. Good job, Dan. Way to hop in there. That's right. He's going to end up getting assassinated. And welcome aboard.
Oh, I thought it was just he got arrested.
Okay, so what event happened that led to JFK being able to get support for the Civil Rights Act? So what caused that support? Oh, welcome Killabrat. Killabrat? Kildebrat? Is that how you say it? What event led to him getting his Civil Rights Act? Or at least support for it. He's not going to end up passing it, but what led to the support for it? Well, not yet. Okay, he's not been assassinated yet. Okay, what event led to him getting the support for the Civil Rights Act? We hadn't gotten the assassination yet. So he's alive. He's got support for the Civil Rights Act. What event happened that allowed him to get that support? That it looks like he's going to get to be able to pass it. Yes, the bombing in Birmingham, and I won't say anything about the spelling. Right, the death of the 6 little girls in Birmingham. That's right. Right, the Birmingham church bombing. That's right.
I was gonna say they burned the whole church.
Hmm?
I was gonna say they burned the church.
No, it was a bomb.
That's what I meant.
Some kind of pipe bomb or something like that.
How's your son's going? I'm gonna like.
That's okay, Thomas. That's all right. If you want to know how to spell Birmingham, it's right up here. That's it. That's okay. Yeah, when I moved to Louisiana, there was a lot of cities here I didn't know how to spell either.
BIRMINGHAM.
That's right. Okay. If y'all know this second here.
I just read the Birmingham off of JFK.
Alright, let's move on. Alright, so on November 22nd, 1963, President John F. Kennedy is shot and killed. He's doing a motorcade, traveling through the city. If you remember back to the Archduke Franz Ferdinand, this is what they tried to do to him. He's driving around, he's waving his little hand, you know, doing this little thing he does. And somebody shoots him. They believe the shooter to be a guy named Lee Harvey Oswald, but they're never able to take him to trial because he gets assassinated also. Now, there's other possible motives for his murder. It could be other reasons, right? One of the major things is there's a lot of people that think that he's about to de-escalate the case, the situation that's going on in Vietnam, and that maybe it was some of the war hawks that wanted him to go to war in Vietnam, so he got taken out for that reason. Maybe it's for civil rights. Maybe it's just somebody's crazy, right? So, you know, crazy people do crazy stuff. There's always been a great source of speculation over why. Tons of conspiracies. You know, it's been played off over and over and over. So what I'm about to show you is it's a little dramatic, but here, I'll let you see it. And I'm being asked, are you going to do a lesson every day? I am. I'll do a lesson every day.
Dallas TV stations were airing regular programming. Live coverage of the president was set to resume when he began making a speech at the Trade Mart.
It should have, and very often you'll find a zipper hidden in the arm.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. You'll excuse the fact that I'm out of breath, but about 10 or 15 minutes ago, a tragic thing, from all indications at this point, has happened in the city of Dallas. Let me quote to you this. And you'll excuse me if I am out of breath. A bulletin, this is from the United Press, from Dallas. President Kennedy and Governor John Connally have been cut down by assassins' bullets in downtown Dallas. They were riding in an open automobile when the shots were fired. The president, his limp body carried in the arms of his wife, Jacqueline, has rushed to Parkland Hospital. And if you'll excuse me if I give some directions and we talk about what we're going to do here for the next few minutes. But, Bobby, let's tape this, if you please, particularly the interview with the eyewitness people. It is being taped good.
Much of that coverage was quickly fed from Dallas to the national networks. and
Okay,
his
so
very
this is
name
pretty graphic,
would
so
come
be
to be
careful.
forever linked to the events of November 22nd, 1963.
May I have your name, please, sir?
My name is Abraham Zapruder.
And would you tell us your story, please, sir?
I got out and about a half hour earlier to get to a good spot to shoot some pictures. And I found a spot, one of these concrete blocks that I have down near that park near the underpass. And I got on top there was another girl from my office. She was right behind me. And as I was shooting, as the president was coming down from Houston Street making his turn, it was about halfway down there, I heard a shot.
I'm going to
And
kind of
he
flash
slumped to the
forward
side.
to the
12
event.
years before television would broadcast all 26 seconds of the Zapruder
And warning,
film.
this is kind of graphic.
Even
so-
though he profited from selling the rights, Abraham Zapruder was deeply disturbed by the nightmare he had captured with his 8mm movie camera. He didn't even keep a copy of the footage.
Okay, so why do you think JFK was assassinated? Do you think it is, do you think it was a situation where it was his support for civil rights? Do you think it was him trying to prevent us from going to war in Vietnam? Or do you think it's just somebody who's crazy? Yeah, he actually died in his wife's arms, to answer Jay's question. Yeah, I mean, you know, this is just my gut. I mean, obviously, we're never going to hear from Lee Harvey Oswald. We're not even ever sure that it was him. But I tend to think, you know, you got that many people that really, really are racist, have a lot of guns. It just takes one nut job. You know, they saw the writing on the wall that he was going to get his civil rights act.
Someone assassinated Abraham Lincoln because I'm pretty sure it's because he abolished slavery.
Right.
And they weren't happy about that.
Right.
And then they had just lost all their slaves in the South. And then they didn't believe that blacks had they weren't civilized.
Right.
Like
Of course,
they were.
what happened to Martin Luther King or Malcolm
Mhm.
X? You know, usually if you're a great civil rights activist, you know, it's
And so
a very high fatality
they
rate.
weren't happy about losing their slaves, and then black people became, like, they were able to vote and stuff like that.
Right.
And they weren't happy about that, so they assassinated them.
That's right. Yeah, it looks like y'all kind of have the same kind of hunch that I do. Of course, we'll never know, you know.
I'm smart.
All right, let me give y'all another minute here.
In fact, I just learned about this in BC.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Very cool. All right, let's move on here. Okay, now with the death of the president, the vice president becomes the president, right? And if you remember back to me explaining to you the situation that Eisenhower walked into when FDR died, it's going to be very much a situation like that, right? When JFK dies, Lyndon Johnson had been kept completely out of the loop, right? He didn't know anything was going on. Whenever you saw like meetings of JFK, meeting with his staff and stuff like that, it was almost always a situation where his brother, Bobby Kennedy, was kind of his right-hand man. So Lyndon B. Johnson was kept completely out of the loop, right? So when he dies, it's almost like if I just picked one of y'all up and just said, all right, you're president tomorrow. You know, you don't know what's going on. You don't know what's happening. He was really only put on the ticket because he was a Southerner, and they thought maybe he could get more votes in the South. But he had almost no knowledge of what was going on. So to understand LBJ, if I were to just tell you what he did, you'd go, man, what a great president. I love this guy, right? He fought for civil rights and on and on and on. The reality of it is, it's more like these events were happening and he just kind of got drug along for the ride. You know, he's put in a lot of situations where he had no choice but to reluctantly give the people what they wanted. So it's kind of a weird bag, right? Like if you just looked at him on paper, right? If you had a spreadsheet of LBJ, you'd go, man, what a great president. But that's not really the whole story, right? His entire platform had been about what he called the Great Society. And he began speaking out on what he had meant to extend prosperity to all Americans. He would ratify the 24th Amendment, and that would end any poll taxing, right? So that kind of unofficially ends the Jim Crow South, right? No way to stop black people from voting anymore. And then you're going to have that event. If you remember back to me telling you that judgment at Nuremberg, if you remember back to that lesson and me telling you the events of Bloody Sunday, which we're going to talk more about tomorrow when I talk to you about civil rights. So that's coming up tomorrow. But suffice it to say, with the events of Bloody Sunday passed and the Civil Rights Act is passed the following day in 1964. Let's see. Oh, and they were asked the question, so why do they still let the vice president become president after the president dies? Well, that is the danger of a president not keeping his vice president in the loop. I mean, obviously you want them to keep the vice president in the loop. However, that's the chain of command. That's how we decide to select it. So, obviously, if you were talking about who's more equipped, who's readier to become president at the time, obviously it would have been Bobby Kennedy, but that's not how the chain of command is. That's the gamble he could have put. You know, he could have put his brother as vice president. I mean, there's nothing that says you can't do that. But a lot of times when you get a vice president, it's really for thinking about voting, right? So let's say, for example, Joe Biden. Okay, Joe Biden is not at all, well, I'll say not at all. He's not really aligned with Bernie Sanders. And I'm not saying he's going to do this, but imagine if he put Bernie Sanders as VP. It's not because they share a common policy. It's that he has to think, okay, I've got all these Bernie Sanders people that really, really love Bernie. How do I get them to vote for me no matter what? So, I'm not saying he will, but I wouldn't even be shocked if he didn't take Elizabeth Warren, just because he's trying to get that progressive vote. Voter. So, yeah, when they pick a vice president, it's usually based on how do they get people to go out and vote for them. It's not based on who do they think is aligned with them as much.
What was the 24th Amendment?
That's right. Ending poll taxes. You put the dogs out. They're not playing. Okay, give you another minute here. Okay. Alright, so now comes the next big event. And this is a really funny story because it's one's often brought up when talking about government conspiracies. It is the kind of low-hanging fruit of government conspiracies. And that is the Gulf of Tonkin incident. Now, this is a story where they basically say that a Vietnamese torpedo sinks a ship of ours in the Gulf of Tonkin. But here's the funny thing. It never happened. It never happened, right? It'd be like if everybody was sold on the sinking of the Lusitania, but it just didn't exist, right? So they just made up the story. And because of that, they wanted to draw outrage just like they had with the Lusitania or Zimmerman telegraph. So they just make it up. And this event people would eventually end up dragging us into Vietnam, even though it never happened. But because of this fake incident, Congress passes legislation allowing Lyndon Johnson to take military action in Vietnam. So why is the Gulf of Tonkin incident so unique as far as other events that have led us to war?
Because it didn't happen?
Yeah, because it was made up. It was a flat-out lie. Never happened. And they knew it, too. They just made it up so that we'd go to war. Yeah, fake story, wasn't real. I mean, this
Fake
is
news.
fake news. Yeah, this is it.
Something
This is the fake news. That's right.
like Donald Trump's hair. His hair blew off. Never got to undo. It was awesome. Donald Trump's hair is fake news. Donald Trump's hair is fake news.
All right, I'm gonna give you about another minute to answer this one. Okay. Okay, so Lyndon Johnson would push for re-election, right? In promising prosperity for all, he would pass the Economic Opportunity Act, and this would kick off his what he called a war on poverty. He's not that well beloved, but he kind of gets just this miracle handed down to him, right? And that is Khrushchev, the guy who was in charge of Russia. The people in Russia decide he has been too weak on the U.S. and they force him to resign. And this kind of looks like Khrushchev got out of town because he was afraid of Lyndon Johnson. It's not the case, but that's how it's kind of sold. And he uses that to kind of rally support to get reelected. All right, so how did Khrushchev being removed of power impact Lyndon Johnson's election? How did it impact Lyndon?
I don't know.
I just said it.
Hello, it's a joint.
Okay. Let's see if somebody else gets the answer. Yeah, it definitely made Khrushchev look weak. That's for sure. But how did Khrushchev being removed help Lyndon Johnson get reelected? Let's see. Yeah, it did work to get him reelected. Yeah, it made people think that Khrushchev was afraid, that Russia's now afraid of us, right? That Lyndon Johnson's like this big, powerful guy, and he's just scaring Russia, right? He's freaking them out.
Well, if somebody thinks the other person is afraid, and they think they have the upper advantage.
That's right. Oh, welcome, Ali. I didn't see you come in here. Jan's in here. Welcome, Jan. Right.
You can tell who's a good student by who's here right now.
Oh yeah, these are my better students, definitely.
You can tell who's a good student by who works, and one day it's optional for them to be able to work. Right, at least they showed up.
Well, this lets me know if everybody's answered and if I can move on. Okay, I think we'll move on. Alright, so after a civil war in Vietnam, the communists take over. And the U.S. uses the Gulf of Tonkin incident that never happened to attack them to try to stop the spread of communism. The bombing begins, and we would soon after have another draft just to get enough manpower to go in and start taking on Vietnam. To help gain support for the war, the black community, he would pass the Voting Rights Act. So again, this is another one of those things where it's like he needed something, so he did the right thing reluctantly. This act would help any future laws that would prohibit people of color from being able to vote. Okay. So here's my question, y'all. Why do y'all think it's so important to have the power to vote?
Oh, I know this one.
All right, go for it, sweetie.
Because, like, if you have the power to elect your representatives in office, then the representatives in office can ask you, and then, like, you get to choose, like, what laws are passed, basically.
That's right. Yeah, it gives you some power over what laws.
So instead of doing, like, what
Mm-hmm.
we used to do, and, like, send one person from, like, every state, like, now we send, like, 2 people, so you get, like, twice the,
Right.
you get twice of the, power in Congress. Because what it really comes down to is you get power, and power makes people feel like they're more important, I guess. Look at me being smart.
Yeah, it gives you power over your laws. Let's see. Yeah, it shows you're supported by the people. That's right. Giving you the power to act. Yeah, to act in their interest. Yeah, it's one of the things you constantly hear them talk about with presidents is, do they have the will of the people?
Look at me being all smart. I'm proud of myself. My teachers never call on me. Except that's probably because I never raised my hand, but still.
Yeah.
When I do raise my hand, everybody calls on me because they're like, oh, you never raised your hand. I'm going to call on you. Do you do that?
Hmm.
I guess someone like never raises their hand.
Oh, I just raised my hand. In school.
No, like if one of your students that you teach like never raised their hand, and like they raise their hand one day.
Well, not everybody is the same level of shyness, so to speak.
Like, what do you call them?
Yeah, sometimes. Prominence of the power to vote allowed groups of individuals to express their opinions for a leader represent. Oh, that's fantastic. Very good. I love that answer. Gives you power over laws. That's right.
Round of applause.
Yeah, it lets you choose what you want. All right. So it would be during this time that Lyndon Johnson would pass Medicare and Medicaid, and this provides millions with access to health care. Right? So now it's a big question that's going on right now. What is the difference between Medicare and Medicaid? What is it? I might throw in some bonus the first person to get the answer right. What's the difference between Medicare and Medicaid?
Me? I don't know.
Well, don't spoil it. I'm gonna toss a little bonus to whoever gets it right first. Well, they are different expenses, but that's not the main difference between the two. What is the difference between Medicare and Medicaid?
But Nationwide is always on my side, so.
Hmm?
So, but Nationwide is on my side, so I don't know.
I'll read it. That's what it is.
Wait, you're back? Go back,
Oh, hold on a second. Okay, I think Miss Francis got it first, but this is going to show both. Medicare's federal program provides health coverage if you're 65. I don't know, you just looked that up because that's the same answer I just saw when I showed it to my daughter. No matter your income, Medicaid is a state and federal program that provides coverage if you have very low income. Right? So what Bernie's fighting for is Medicare.
the same
I'm sorry,
answer as
Medicaid
Google.
for all. That was kind of his policies. Everybody have access to Medicaid.
You had the same
That's
answer
right.
as Google. She did. Jemima. Miss Edwards had the same answer as Google.
Diane says Medicaid is for everybody. I wish it was. Me personally, I'm a fan of the Medicaid for everybody. All right. Now, not believing the reasons the U.S. gave for invading Vietnam, which were made up, by the way, NATO would withdraw their support. Okay, so they back out. They're like, look, we don't want any part of this war in Vietnam. So basically, at this point, the United States is on their own, right? Other things that happened during this period of time, Thurgood Marshall would become the first black Supreme Court justice. Okay, so this is Thurgood Marshall. They would also pass the 25th Amendment, which allows Lyndon Johnson to name his own vice president. And that's basically a situation where if the president dies and the vice president takes over, it allows him to name his own vice president. Okay, so who was the first black Supreme Court judge?
I know the answer. Marshall.
Blood. O positive.
I'm in a positive too. No, if they can't get it as easy.
We're a bunch of O's.
Wait, so Ed gets it easier? Or it doesn't? Thurgood Marshall. I don't know how you say the name.
Yeah, they got it.
Good.
They got it.
I don't know how you say that.
All right, let's move on.
Round of
Okay.
applause to everyone.
Now, as this war in Vietnam drags on, it's not going good, right? It's an absolute unmitigated disaster. They're really dug in. We're going to talk later in a future upcoming Nearpod on the war in Vietnam, but suffice it to say, it's an absolute disaster, right? In addition to that, MLK, Martin Luther King, he's assassinated, and so you're going to see the protests piling up. Protests in Vietnam begin piling up, and he kind of decides, look, I've had enough of this. I'm just going to bow out, right? So he just decides he doesn't even want to seek re-election, which he could have, right? He only had won presidency once. The other term he had was because JFK had died. So he decides, I don't want any part of it, I'm out. Okay, so why do you think LBJ did not seek re-election? This is almost our last slide. And then the climb to the top.
I don't know.
What do you think?
Well, I don't know, maybe because he didn't want to be the reason that, like, he didn't want to get blamed for everything that happened. Like, he didn't want to...
Yeah, well, I mean, they're blaming him for it anyway. I think it's a big part of it's like, he's fed up. Like, he's tired. Because let me tell you, you saw the crowds at the White House that were protesting Trump. They were like that nonstop, and they were protesting him just because of the war in Vietnam.
Because, like, if I were him, like, I wouldn't want, like, he just didn't want anyone to, like, I wouldn't want people showing up on my doorstep every day telling me how much I suck and how bad of a person I am.
Yeah. Why?
Like, I don't know.
Weird. How did you get through?
Yeah.
That's a good point. Yeah, Miss Ross, that's because he's probably scared of being assassinated. That's very good.
Yeah, he didn't want to do something wrong and everybody.
Yeah, he didn't want to deal with the stress. That's a good one.
Well, maybe he thought like if somebody else was in office.
Yeah, he didn't want that stain on his name.
Yeah.
As the war goes bad.
Maybe he thought if somebody else is in office, and like we lose the war, then maybe they'll be blamed for losing the war. And
Right.
I won't be blamed.
Right.
And my house won't get set on fire or something.
Okay, here we go. We're gonna finish this puppy up. I'm doing water just because I'm sick of the other two. We're gonna do water.
What?
It's like kind of like a game show type thing. They're gonna compete to see who learned the most and can answer the quickest.
Ooh. I want to play.
If you had a device, you could play.
No, they're all high school students. They're smarter than me. Plus, I take forever to type, so.
It's like picking multiple choice.
Oh.
Alright, about to get going here. 15, got one more. Who are we missing? Okay, it looks like they dropped out. Alright, let's fire it up. See, they have answer options. Let's see if you can do it without the answer options.
Yeah. It was the Berwin Wall, folks.
The Iron Curtain. What event saw civil rights leaders JFK calling for civil rights?
The bombing of the Birmingham church.
That's right. Very good. No answer options.
Look at me go!
Publicly push for a civil rights act. Oh, this is the church one. Or maybe the question's on there twice.
Oh, it's a church. I'm like, wait, can it be the same answer twice? What?
fate of JFK?
Assassination. We just talked about this. Maybe the last five.
What was the 24th Amendment? Do you remember?
Poll taxation.
That's right. It was the poll taxes. Oh yeah, she was participating.
Oh, Mr. Patterson would be so proud of me.
This man's in the camera
It's okay.
shot. Okay, what event was made up by government to drag the U.S. into war in Vietnam?
The bombing of the ship thing, the U.S. ship, they sent the,
Remember what it was called?
no.
It's called the Gulf of Tonkin incident.
Yeah.
Oh,
the
you
Gulf
can
of-
see, man.
I remember it was like the Gulf or something. Can I still see us? Can they still see us? Can they still hear us?
Oh,
They can still see you walking in the background. What is that?
LBJ win election.
The Russian guy
Yeah?
that got off office.
Yeah. Kershaw resigned. That's right. Good job.
I can't remember if that was like the reason why. No, that was the other guy that, never mind. Alright. It's okay though. You said it was with the murder earlier. That's about me. But I thought it was before, so.
Okay, what government health care program provides health care for the poor and the disabled?
Medicaid. Or Medicare.
Medicaid.
Medicaid. I got it right the first time.
You did.
Yay! Go me! I thought it was
Yeah.
I've only gotten one wrong so far. 'Cause I didn't know what the name of it was. Look at me having a good memory. Learning
It was the first ever black Supreme Court justice.
I know it's, T-H-O or
Thurgood Marshall.
Thurgood Marshall. I knew his last name started with Marshall because I remember Paw Patrol. Paw Patrol was I remember it sounded something good. Because, I don't know. I just used life stuff from like Joe. Because you watch Paw Patrol. Looks like Ryan is in the lead.
Yep. It looks like Mr. Favors is our winner, followed by Mr. Wooden, and followed by Mr. Davis. Alright.
A round of applause to you.
Alright, well everybody, that is it for the live stream. Thank you so much for tuning in
Oh,
with
you
me.
should
I
do-
appreciate y'all showing up. I appreciate y'all's commitment to your education. Before I let y'all go, do y'all have any last questions? It could be about the Nearpod or anything else.
You should do like the first place gets 5 points.
I'll give
5
mine.
bonus points and
Right.
second place gets 4.
If
third
you
place
got any
gets-
questions, feel free to put them in the live stream real fast. I'll give you one more minute.
You should like email you if they have any other questions that they realize later.
still on the mic?
Yeah.
Ask me questions.
Okay, well, if that's it for questions, I appreciate y'all coming out. Thank you for participating in the live stream, and I will see you tomorrow at noon. I may end up doing, will the only work we'll get from you for beef on Nearpods? I might post some other stuff in there, like DBQs, some vocab, stuff like that. But it's mostly going to be Nearpod, just so I can interact with y'all. So, that's right. All right, any other questions? Okay, well, again, thank y'all for showing up. I appreciate it. I appreciate y'all's commitment to your education. So, all right, y'all have a good day. Stay safe. Stay inside. Do not go out. Do not be around.
Wash your hands.
Yeah, wash your hands. Definitely stay away from the elderly.
Stay away from people in general.
Yeah. All right, have a great
Don't
day.
get the coronavirus.